Recent revelations about widespread electronic surveillance by the NSA, the CIA, and other intelligence agencies have spurred considerable debate about our most basic civil liberty, the right of privacy.
Just who is listening to our phone calls or reading our emails, and how much of our private lives end up in a computer file somewhere. All this week, the I-Team will be looking into surveillance issues, who might be listening, and why.
Tonight, George Knapp is here with news about why Las Vegas is the #1 dubious category in wiretaps.
You might recall earlier this year we reported on a study by the Pew organization which shows Las Vegas is the per capita wiretap king of the country. The number of authorized electronic surveillance operations here is 3 times as high as the #2 jurisdiction on the list. Back in the bad old days of the mob, that might have made sense, but why now? So we dug into the numbers, spoke to the lawmen who say they need this tool to go after very bad people, and we heard from others who think it is all fundamentally disturbing. The January disappearance of Las Vegan Irma McCurchin prompted her family to offer a $10,000 reward for information, but 3 of those family members were considered suspects in a possible homicide. So listening devices were installed in their home, in their cars, and on their phones. After weeks of 24-hour-a-day monitoring, the taps were discontinued. Charges have not been filed. One reason we know about it is that calls from 8 News Now to the family were among those intercepted, and a notice was sent to the TV station. Across the country, lawmen are making increased use of electronic surveillance, and nowhere more so than Las Vegas.
Tens of thousands were intercepted, and my best guess is maybe as many as 1 million phone calls have been intercepted in the year 2012.
Defense attorney Dominic Gentile says he understands there are cases where the government has no choice but to use bugs to acquire evidence against criminals, including here in Nevada. At the Las Vegas Mob Museum, there's even an exhibit which highlights how electronic surveillance helped take down the mafia here.
They would put transmitters on our cars, cameras and sound bugs in my restaurant.
When a national study earlier this year revealed that Las Vegas far and away is the most bugged city in the country per capita, Gentile was not surprised by the lack of public outrage.
I'm really saddened by it. I think that it's probably a surrendering, candidly, in many respects because of people's concerns about their security. They have given up their freedom.
With new technology, there's no longer a need to attach an actual device to a phone, but everyone still has to be approved by a court. How many bugs are floating around out there? We used figures filed with the U.S. Court Administration. More than 95% of the wiretaps applied for are granted by local judges. Here are the numbers for 2012 and 2013, in the neighborhood of 200 approved taps each year. But each of those taps can run for 30 days, during which they intercept sometimes hundreds of calls per day, and overall, thousands of individuals are intercepted each year in hundreds of thousands of conversations. The work is not cheap because the taps have to be manned round the clock. A few hundred wiretaps each year cost more than $4 million one year, $8 million another. How effective are they? In terms of arrests, the numbers are much smaller than the number of taps. 134 arrests in the most recent year, 39 the year before. And the number of convictions is even smaller, 78 and 11 respectively. It means that for both years, fewer than 1% of the taps result in convictions.
Millions of dollars reported by the DA's offices having been spent on those wiretaps. If we're coming up with 6 prosecutions, one would think that it might not be the best way of spending public tax money.
A lot of people won't like to hear this, but the reason that we do so many is because we have the best cops around. They are extremely good at what they do, and the best way to dismantle an organization is through wiretaps.
Kent Bitsko, head of local high-intensity drug trafficking enforcement, makes no apologies for electronic surveillance. Nearly all of the taps are because Las Vegas is now a major narcotics hub.
The people here are talking directly to Mexico, and it's not stopping in San Diego or LA. It's coming from the distributor in Mexico directly to Southern Nevada.
The raw numbers are deceptive, he says. Drug dealers change phones every few days. Each new phone requires a new wiretap, so one investigation might require dozens of taps. One reason for the high expense is almost all of the taps target non-English speaking suspects, so interpreters have to be on the monitoring team. And while the ratio of taps to convictions might be low, his teams target only the biggest fish, he says.
Their job is to only investigate the biggest drug trafficking organizations that are operating in Clark County and the state. And most of our cases have far-reaching impact. They're in multiple states or outside of our country.
DA Steve Wolfson, whose office has to submit all the wiretap applications, agrees that one reason our rates are so high is that the drug task force here is especially aggressive, including the 2 prosecutors full-time assigned to it. And he says it isn't just convictions by which the effectiveness should be measured, it's also in tons of dope and piles of guns taken off the streets.
No city in America is subject to more wiretaps than Las Vegas. Law enforcement agencies here ask for more electronic surveillance warrants per capita than lawmen anywhere else. And the requests are granted more than 95% of the time.
But as the I-Team reported earlier tonight, hundreds of wiretaps per year produce only a dozen or so convictions. So what are the police doing with all that information they collect by listening to phone calls and conversations? George Knapp has a look at those questions as part of an I-Team examination of surveillance in Nevada.
They would put transmitters on our cars, cameras and sound bugs in my restroom.
Electronic surveillance was a staple during the years when mafia tough guys prowled our town, which is why there's an exhibit devoted to bugs at the Mob Museum. Nevadans have always been sensitive to the possibility someone might be listening on the other end of the phone line, which is why our laws are some of the toughest in the country.
The whole purpose of Nevada's privacy laws was transparency, more transparency than is offered in the federal system or in any other state.
Defense lawyer Dominic Gentile praises Nevada law because it demands notification to anyone intercepted on a wiretap. As the I-Team has shown, Nevada leads the nation in wiretaps. Each of the hundreds of applications are requested by law enforcement, nearly all of them approved. Each tap can be up and running 24/7 for weeks, with extensions into several months. A typical tap might intercept hundreds or thousands of conversations per week, involving hundreds of people. But Gentile suspects many of those intercepted are not being notified. One reason he has doubts is that Gentile hasn't received notification himself.
I have never received one from the state of Nevada. I cannot believe that my law practice has gotten so pristine that I'm no longer talking to clients of mine who are being intercepted. And so the only conclusion that I could come up with is that they're just not telling anybody that they're being intercepted, or they're being very selective when they do.
One of Gentile's colleagues sent out a survey to Nevada's criminal bar. Only one other lawyer said he'd received a notification about a client being tapped. Records show close to 13,000 people on wiretaps in Clark County in 2013. DA Steve Wolfson told us his office sent out about 2,900 notifications. Why the large gap? A lot of people picked up on taps can't be identified or use throwaway phones and can't be located. Those who are still targets of open investigations might not be told at all. Gentile thinks it's something more sinister, though, that police are using wiretaps to gather intelligence rather than evidence.
What they're doing is they're taking that information and they're using a technique called a handoff. And a handoff is basically giving the information to a law enforcement officer or team that theoretically does not know that the information came from a wiretap.
If the information is passed along as an anonymous tip and results in a traffic stop that becomes a drug bust, Gentile thinks it would be illegal, except no one involved would know to even ask about it, which is why there are almost no motions to suppress filed by the defense here.
No, we call tips in all the time. But we don't do it anonymously. We give them the information. Yeah, you've got this going, Philadelphia, we'll call Philadelphia. You have this going in your town. We've got this intel. And that's what we give them. And then if they can work up a case, they can work up a case.
Drug Task Force Chief Kent Bitsko makes no bones about it. They do share wiretap information with other agencies because most of their targets are drug traffickers involved in multi-state or multinational rings. It's also why, he says, the number of arrests and convictions here might seem low, because the suspects end up being busted somewhere else with information gleaned from Nevada wiretaps.
Now, I don't know where that came from that we weren't prosecuting, but when we do a wire, we're prosecuting. Now, they might not all go to court. They may be plea bargains.
Yeah, but either way, you're
So they're prosecuting. Yeah, somebody's going to jail.
It's an age-old trade-off, safety and security versus privacy and civil liberties. George Knapp, 8 News Now.
Attorney Gentile is also suspicious because about 2/3 of the wiretaps are approved by judges that almost exclusively practice civil law, virtually no criminal law. The DA says it's not involved in judge shopping. It seeks okay for warrants from whichever judges happen to be around. We have a complete list of the judges who approved the taps, how long the taps lasted, and how many were intercepted, plus many other resources on our website. Use the keyword surveillance. Tomorrow at 5, the I-Team's Glenn Meek investigates mysterious cell phone towers, who might be behind them and why. How secure is your cell phone?
You may have heard reports of mystery cell phone towers popping up around the country, including the Las Vegas area.
Are they real? And if so, who's behind them? I-Team's Glenn Meek has been investigating the reports and joins us with hopefully some answers.
Well, you know, cell phone security is a really hot topic right now. And if you have been anywhere near a TV or an internet news site in the past few weeks, you've undoubtedly heard about these so-called mystery cell towers.
Fake cell phone towers popping up.
And these things can intercept your cell phone data calls.
Fake cell towers do pose a threat.
The phone is being tricked into saying, I am the only cell tower available to you, but the truth is it's not really a cell tower.
Les Goldsmith ought to know what's really behind fake cell tower mania. It began with a magazine story about his product, the Cryptophone. The Cryptophone has its own encryption and software that can detect when the signal is being intercepted by something called an IMSI catcher.
So we've already had one alert on the phone to show that it has connected to an IMSI catcher.
IMSI stands for International Mobile Subscriber Information. Someone using an IMSI catcher can capture basic data about your phone. Goldsmith says more advanced versions, called interceptors, can download email and even monitor calls. These devices mimic cell towers, but they're not towers.
The phone is being told, you don't have a choice, you have to do it my way. So it's being forced by the interceptor or IMSI catcher to connect to it.
We're on an expedition with Goldsmith to find an IMSI catcher, and we do. However, Goldsmith has reason to believe it's a law enforcement device, the most common of which is called a stingray. Stingrays work like this. The device, hidden in a van in this scenario, is moved into an area where police want to capture cell phone data from suspects. The stingray overrides other cell towers in the area and scoops up the signal of phones near it. Data is captured by law enforcement and the signal passed on to an actual cell tower, so the person with the phone has no idea that anything happened. Some privacy advocates think stingray is aptly named.
In fact, the way this thing works is it scoops up everyone's data. And so it is absolutely a fishing expedition to a certain extent.
While conceding secrecy is needed in law enforcement, Fakuri and others are concerned about what happens to data collected from phones of innocent bystanders.
We have never really seen any policies on the part of police departments where they explain what they do with the data of the non-responsive data. Are they deleting it? Are they sharing it with other law enforcement agencies? We don't really know. No one's been really forthright about it.
So right now, both phones are being pinged by the interceptor about every 30-35 seconds. So this is pretty much a clear demonstration that this type of technology is in use in Nevada and even in close proximity to Las Vegas.
We're not revealing the location where we got the alerts because it appears part of a law enforcement operation. But we did head for the Las Vegas Strip, which Goldsmith says is a target-rich environment for illegal interceptors.
There's a lot of meetings, a lot of conferences, a lot of high-level execs coming in for, a dinner party or something. So you just have no idea what information is being leaked out of those locations.
This day we find no interceptors on the Strip, but Goldsmith's company has produced a map of devices detected by his customers around the U.S.
And a lot of people are skeptical at this. but our suspicion remains that many of them are in fact foreign intelligence, or they're other people using programs and so forth from a laptop trying to, steal information.
While Mr. Goldsmith believes there may be more bad guys out there with interceptors than cops, remember he is in the business of selling secure cell phones. Now, a Metro Police spokesman told me today that the department does use devices like Stingray, but that the data is not retained. A court order is needed to use them, but not a search warrant, which is generally more difficult to get. And tomorrow, every move we make, or every move you make, continues with our colleague Vanessa Murphy looking at surveillance on the Strip, both in and out of the casinos.
Interesting.
Yeah.